would, either they're going to keep the building or you're going to keep the building. They're going to keep this truck or you're going to keep this truck. There's a set of assumptions associated with it. I mean, I'm not sure that at least in my experience, that you're going to find that if there is a notion that you're going to be able to do it less expensively, I'm not sure that you're headed down the right road. In terms of picking of divisions, the cost of fire service is horrific. The smaller you get, proportionally, the more expensive it becomes. Again, depending upon the types of service that you want to provide. If you want to provide 24-hour, 7-day-a-week coverage, that's one set of circumstances. If you're content to have no full-time staffing and rely totally on volunteers, that's another set of staffing. There are implications with regard to what you do and who you may or may not be able to get mutual aid agreements with. And some of that's purely economic, some of that's political. And again, I don't know who and the how of the politics of the region. So that there may be some agencies or some organizations that say, we're not interested in a mutual aid agreement with you because we're happy with the situation the way it is now. And those are things, we can tell you about them and we'll inquire about them. At the end of the day, you may not be able to overcome those things. And you can't run in New Hampshire, you can't run public safety agencies effectively without mutual aid agreements.
I believe we have all the mutual aid agreements right now with all the adjoining towns in the Lakes region. And I think that what we're looking at is, right now, we have a fire station in Northfield over here. We've got a fire station here in Tilton. And then on the other side of 93, there's absolutely nothing. And there used to be the Winnisquam Fire District over there that has dissolved. And so for us to put a building on the other side of 93, we're going to need 2/3 of the people in Northfield to say they'd like to build a building over there, which is not likely going to happen.
Right.
So the thought process is possibly that the fire district dissolves, we clean up our house, and then we sit down to the table and we make a new agreement with Northfield and possibly Samberton and Belmont in order to do this again. But in order to be able to cover our town, that we dissolve, maybe it's for a temporary period, and then we get back in and work with them again in a joint venture.
Yeah, and again, it's hard for me to intelligently comment because I don't know enough. But I mean, it would be, we might, and again, we'll offer suggestions. If in fact you're thinking of, if the long-term thinking is to continue with some sort of regionalized approach, we would probably recommend steps to get from here to there. I mean, one of the things we're going to need to understand first and foremost is what do we think from a professional perspective do you need now and will you need 10 years from now? So the reasonable planning window is 10 years. And so that's what we'll look at. And then we'll then, part of this process is to sit and speak with you all and get a sense of what you think. Part of what we're going to look at is your zoning and your master plan and growth trends. Where is the growth going to happen? You say on the other side
Over 93.
93, if that's where the growth is likely to happen, then that's where the need is going to be at some point in time. The big question obviously is who's on the other side of 93 with you? Sandbourneton's over there. What are the other needs and what are they currently doing? And at the end of the day, we'll give you something a report that's fairly comprehensive in terms of looking at what you have today. What's good about what you have today? What's weak? What could be done better if you change nothing? And then, what might you fine-tune or tweak? Is it practical to assume that you can go it alone, on your own? And if so, what do those numbers look like? And from our perspective, what's the ideal situation if you were to provide? What are your needs for coverage from a pragmatic point of view, from a professional point of view, and how do we think you should provide them?
Well, things do seem to be a little lopsided in that we seem to be making the largest contribution to the district dollar-wise, and yet the assets seem to be loaded maybe how the community looked 50 years ago, more so than they are today. So it does leave an area of the town without coverage. So I think we're looking for this independence, this fresh look, and not just with that one path in mind, but it may also, whether or not we ever get to the point of dissolution, is that it will give us a substantive point of discussion and say, look, we don't have the coverage we need, or we do, but it's not satisfactory.
And
for
part
this
of it is going to need to understand. I mean, one of the issues is that if assuming that the growth area is on the other side of 93, you need to bear in mind that those areas are growing with contemporary zoning and contemporary building codes. And so the risks are dramatically different. You know, if your home has been built post 1980, your risk of fire loss is dramatically different than if your house was built in 1940. If you're on a 2-acre house lot, the risks are much less dramatic than they are if you are in a 0 lot line environment like we are in downtown. And so part of the assessment will be to look at where are your risks clustered. Not only fire departments are really no longer in the business of fighting fires. They're in the prevention and they're in the EMS and rescue mode. And so that's part of what kind of the exercise that we will go through is you know, under contemporary codes, you shouldn't have anywhere near the fire exposure that you had 50 years ago. And you know, I mean, most fire departments are really not in the suppression business much anymore. They're in the prevention business, or should be.
But that's not what you see on the news.
But I mean, it is. I mean, but the same thing is true with almost any public safety entity. I mean, you know, you can't have enough police officers to prevent the random murder. You can't have enough firefighters to prevent the catastrophe that occurs on a random basis. But if you look at the number of working fire calls in most communities in 2000 from 2000 on as compared to 1950 to 1970, it's unbelievable.
Does anyone have any more questions, Mr. Chapman?
I feel much more comfortable now if you can, obviously you can give all the information from the Tilton Fire District. They're great people. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't do this, and maybe maybe this is an effort in futility, but if we're asked by the residents, how does it work if we do this? The only way for us to do it is to hire a third party to go in there and give us the information. So, so how do you want this to work now? I mean, what this says is that within 10 days of signing this, we got to start paying you, which is fine. But if you find that you're not going to be able to get the information that you need,
well, I'm telling you, and I'm on the record, that we won't incur any cost.
okay.
That I mean, we'll incur costs, but we won't expect to collect on that. If we come back, well, the first thing we're going to do is it's not going to happen in the next 5 days, but
Sure, of course.
you know, immediately after the first of the year, we will be in touch with the folks at the fire agency. If in the course of conversation we discover that we can't get access to because they don't have information that's going to materially impact on the report, or